And welcome back to the Business Spotlight. Patrick Dewar here. We've got Jeannie Fuller in the room today, and we are talking about ways to create an endless supply of referrals. I know you're doing a great deal of training, speaking, and presenting around the country. You said you had one client that was at the in 3 years was able to do what most people couldn't do in 5.
That's correct.
Awesome. So tell me about your...
Well, I'd like to tell you a story, Pat. I was training, again, in one of the financial investment firms in Rochester, New York. And this gentleman who walked in, very tall, had hair the color of mine, had been around a while. And as he went by me...
must have been around a while.
Yeah, I know. So he said, I hope this is going to be different. And I'm going, oh my gosh. So I'm up there putting all the energy, and I like gestures anyway. And when I got through, I found out from the regional VP that he had been in the firm for 33 years, and he ranked number 5 out of 14,000 people.
Wow.
Well, in a couple of weeks, he gave me a call, and he said, Jeannie, this stuff works. It really works. I'm going, good, because I'm sticking my life on it, And so what he had done, his first client that morning had been Steve, and he used my principles. So the first thing when Steve came in, he said, Steve, before we get into today's work, I just want to know what's going on. What's going on at the plant? What's happening for you? And he found a need, a problem that Steve was facing, and stopped the interview and called the other advisor, got that all set up. And then he highlighted what he had done for Steve over 10 years. And then he made a few suggestions. Steve took his suggestions, and as Steve is leaving and walked him to the door, he turned around and he said, Lyle, I really appreciate you taking those few moments, when I first came in and calling that other advisor. I'm going to call him when I get back to the plant. Is there anything at all I could do for you? And Lyle says, well, as a matter of fact, there is. Even though I've been very successful, I'm still looking for more clients. And he said, I'm looking for somebody, about 52, 53 years old, probably lives on the north side of town. Kids are in college, may own a manufacturing plant. And I really like to deal with macho kind of guys. It's the kind of guy who would drive a Jeep Grand Cherokee. He's probably a hunter, and he's got a golden retriever in the back seat. And the guy came up with 3 referrals right then. And this was a guy using all the training his firm had given him for 10 years, never came up with anyone. And when Lyle walked him to the elevator, and when he got on, he held out the door, and said, listen, Lyle, as soon as we get you those 3, I'll take you to my trade association. There's 28 more guys over there. They all have more assets than I do. And I'll help you get those as well. 31 referrals.
Now it's time to analyze the success of Lyle. But before we get into all of that, pause the video if you haven't already and print out the PDF at the bottom of this page so you can follow along with us. That is going to serve as a template for you as you go out to create referrals to make sure you include the 3 major elements that made Lyle's success that morning. So here we go. You will notice that there are 3 circles. This is called a Venn diagram. Those represents the 3 major elements that worked for Lyle. So what were they? Think about it. There are 3 major elements that he did that made the huge difference. The first thing he did was he inspired Steve to give a referral by doing something for him, for recommending an advisor to handle a problem. The second thing he did is he taught Steve how to recommend him by going back over his story. He gave a history of what he had done very succinctly and taught him how to recommend. And the last thing he did is he showed Steve how to recognize a prospect by giving him a very, very, very specific description, down to the kind of dog he had in the back seat, the type of SUV he drove, painted a mental picture so Steve could come up with 3 prospects right then. Now let's show you why this is so important. Let's suppose, first of all, that you forget to go over the description of your prospect. You do something for them so they're inspired, and you teach them your story so they know how to recommend you, but where just this one and this one overlap in here, your center of influence, your client is saying, well, who's your prospect? And if they don't thoroughly understand, there's a couple of things that could happen. They may say, well, let me think about it. Or they could give you someone that's not qualified. Okay, now let's look at what happens if you haven't taught them how to tell your story and they're not sure what to say. So where recognize and inspire overlap right in here, the question is, what do I say? And when someone wants to give you a referral, they're inspired. They want to give you a referral. They know who your prospect is, but they don't know what to say. They don't want to open their mouth and sound stupid. So what happens? They give you a name and a phone number, and there's no introduction. And then finally, if you don't inspire them and you don't do anything for them and you're all about me, recognize and recommend overlap right here, question, of course, is why should I do anything for you? And if I'm not motivated, I'm going to have to think about it, and maybe I'll get back with you, or I do nothing. So this is why we need all three elements. Appointment that Lyle had demonstrates what we're going to show you in our programs is to show you how to coach someone. So you first inspire them to give you a referral by doing something for them. Then you teach them to recognize a prospect and how to recommend you powerfully, and so you get referrals for profit.